On the 1st of July, 1976, a woman walked out of a hotel in Dallas with 36 cents in her pocket and a mobile gas card in her hand. She had just left the man she had been married to for 16 years, crossing a live freeway on foot to get away from him. That woman had sold over 10 million records. She had headlined Las Vegas and opened for the Rolling Stones. On paper, she was worth almost nothing. Every dollar she had ever earned belonged to the man she was running from. This is where the money actually went. Start with the name, because even the name was a trap. She was born Anna Mae Bullock in Nutbush, Tennessee, and when she first started singing, she was billed as Little Ann. Then in 1960, she recorded a song called A Fool in Love, and it sold 1 million copies. The record label that put it out paid a $20,000 advance and told her band leader, Ike Turner, to build everything around her voice. So he did. He gave her a new name, Tina, and then he did something almost no one talks about. He trademarked it. The name Tina Turner became his legal property. He had built it to work like a leash, something he owned outright, so that the woman singing under it could always be replaced. And the money problem was there from the very beginning, years before the marriage fell apart. In November of 1962, Ike and Tina took their own record label to court. They sued Sue Records for $330,000, claiming the company had, in their words, withheld and concealed over $100,000 of their earnings. Sit with that timeline for a second. They were barely 2 years into their success, and they were already in a courtroom fighting over money that had gone missing. The record of how that lawsuit ended does not survive in any public file, so we can't tell you who won. But the pattern was already set. The money this act generated had a way of disappearing before it ever reached the woman whose voice was selling it. For the next 16 years, the Ike and Tina Turner Revue was one of the hardest working acts in America. They played as many as 300 nights a year, grinding across the country on what was then called the Chitlin Circuit. In 1966, they cut river deep, mountain high, and they were booked to open for the Rolling Stones on tour in Britain, and the act exploded. Proud Mary, which sold more than 1 million copies and won a Grammy. Nutbush City Limits. They first headlined the International Hotel in Las Vegas in 1969. They came back to play Caesar's Palace. They recorded a live album at Carnegie Hall, and they returned to Vegas again to headline the Hilton. It was somewhere in those Las Vegas years, at the very height of the money, that Ike started using cocaine, a habit that would one day swallow everything he owned. And the money coming in was real. After their breakout at the end of the 60s, their fee for a single night jumped from around $1,000 to $5,000. Their manager, Bob Krasno, told Rolling Stone magazine in 1971 that he kept pushing Ike on the numbers, asking why the act would settle for $1,000 a night when it could be pulling $20,000. On the recording side, one label guaranteed them $50,000 a year, then another guaranteed $150,000 a year for 2 albums. And by the middle of 1971, the act had taken in around $450,000 in advances alone. So the money existed. The question was, who controlled it? And the answer was always the same. Every contract, every booking, every payment ran through Ike. He built a recording studio and named it after Tina's own maiden name. And he ran the finances of the entire operation from inside it. She sang. She was the reason people bought the tickets and filled the casino showrooms. And she was almost never handed the money directly. Years later, she said it as plainly as it can be said. She said he needed to control her economically so that she could never leave. She was the entire engine of a business worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and she was not allowed to touch the cash it produced. So in the early 1970s, something changed, and it had nothing to do with money. It was the one thing Ike could not control. Around this time, inside that same recording studio, Tina was introduced to a Buddhist practice, and she began chanting a single phrase, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, sometimes for as long as 4 hours a day. This is the part of the story the money cannot explain, and it is the part that made everything after it possible. She described what it did for her in her own words, again and again, for the rest of her life. In her documentary, she said that the more she chanted, the more she became liberated, mentally, and the less afraid she became of the man she lived with. In her memoir, she wrote that she was becoming stronger, becoming less and less afraid. Years later, she put it as simply as it can be put, telling a reporter that Buddhism saved her life. Decades on, she would write an entire book about the practice, about taking the worst poison life can hand you and turning it into medicine. But in the early 70s, none of that was public. It was just a woman in a violent house, quietly building something inside herself that her husband could not see and could not take. This is the part almost everyone gets wrong about the escape story. She did not just snap one night and run. She spent years quietly building the internal strength to leave a man who controlled her money, her name, and her fear. And by the summer of 1976, she was ready. The problem was, Ike had just made a business move that would have locked her in for another 5 years. Here is what she was actually running from. In 1976, Ike had arranged to move the act to a new label, Cream Records, for a reported $150,000 a year across 5 years. And that contract carried a clause that mattered far more than the money. It was a key person clause, and it would have legally bound Tina to Ike for the full 5-year term. The deal was set to be signed in the first week of July. She ran on the 1st of July, days before the signatures were supposed to go down. She waited until Ike was asleep in that Dallas hotel, and she left with 36 cents and a gas card, running across a freeway to a motel on the other side. Then she disappeared, moving from house to house with friends so he could not find her. She filed for divorce a few weeks later. And here is where we traced the money, through the actual divorce decree, because the settlement is where the real story lives, and it is colder than the movie ever showed you. The divorce was finalized on the 29th of March, 1978. In it, Tina did not fight for the money. She gave nearly all of it away, on purpose. Ike kept the recording studio. He kept the real estate. He kept the publishing companies, which meant he kept the royalties on the songs he had written, and on the songs she had written too. She walked away with 2 Jaguars, her furs, her jewelry, and one thing more: the name. She also walked away with the debts. Concert promoters sued her for the shows the act had canceled when she disappeared. A credit card company took her to court over $26,000. The tax authorities put a lien on her. She left the biggest act she had ever been part of owing money, cleaning up the bills for tours she never got to finish. In her own words, decades later, "The divorce, I got nothing, no money, no house. So I said, I'll just take my name." Now think about what that name actually was. It was the leash. It was the exact thing Ike had trademarked to make her replaceable. She reached into the wreckage, took the one object that had been built to trap her, and walked out with it as the only thing she owned. The problem was, in 1978, that name was worth almost nothing. If this is already changing the way you see the whole story, subscribe, because we take apart the money behind a famous name like this every single week. Now, what she did with a worthless name is the part that matters most. For almost 2 years, she was on food stamps. She cleaned houses to make rent. She took any booking that paid, singing on game shows and variety hours, playing cabaret rooms at Caesar's Palace to half-full crowds, all while she chipped away at the debt from Ike's canceled tours. She was in her late 30s, a legend the industry had already quietly written off, playing lounges just to survive. Then a manager named Roger Davies took her on and rebuilt her, one booking at a time. He put her back in front of the Rolling Stones, opening their tour in 1981, this time entirely on her own terms. And in 1984, at 44 years old, at an age the record business treats as finished for a woman, she released an album called Private Dancer. The single What's Love Got to Do With It went to #1, the first solo #1 of her entire career, which also made her the oldest woman up to that point to top the American charts. The album sold more than 12 million copies worldwide. She won 4 Grammys in a single night, including Record of the Year. At 44 years old, broke just a few years earlier, she had pulled off one of the biggest comebacks in the history of recorded music. And then came the tours. And this is where the money finally starts moving toward her, instead of away from her. Her Break Every Rule tour was the biggest tour by any woman in the entire decade. She drew 180,000 people to a single stadium show in Rio de Janeiro, a world record for a solo performer at the time. Her Wildest Dreams tour became the first tour by a woman ever to cross $100 million. Her 24/7 tour pulled in over $120 million. Her farewell tour grossed more than $130 million. The woman who had walked out with 36 cents was now generating hundreds of millions of dollars on stages around the world, and every single ticket was sold under the name she had rescued from that divorce. But her biggest financial move was still coming, and it had nothing to do with a stage. In 2021, she made it on paper. That October, she sold the company BMG the rights to her music, her recordings, her publishing, and listed right there in the deal her name, her image, and her likeness. The reported price was around $50 million. Read that one more time with everything you now know. The name Ike had trademarked so that she could be thrown away and replaced. The leash, she sold it herself, on her own terms, for a reported $50 million. She turned the instrument of her own control into the final payday of her life. And this was not a nostalgia purchase. By the early 2020s, that catalog was still generating around $3.5 million a year, most of it from streams outside the United States. BMG was buying an asset that still prints money every single year, and the woman selling it knew exactly what it was worth. By then, she had already walked away from far more than the marriage. She had left the United States entirely, moving to Switzerland in the mid-1990s, and in 2013, she signed the papers to give up her American citizenship altogether. And she had built a life with a man who was the opposite of the one she fled. In 2017, when her kidneys were failing, her second husband, Erwin Bach, donated one of his own to save her life. In late 2021, the two of them bought an estate on Lake Zurich, a compound of 10 buildings spread across more than 250,000 square feet, for a reported $76 million. She died there, at that home in Switzerland, on the 24th of May, 2023, with an estimated fortune of around $250 million. Now look at the other side of the ledger, because the contrast is the entire point of this story. Ike kept the valuable things in that divorce: the studio, the publishing, the real estate, the assets that were supposed to be the smart half of the split. So watch what happened to them. That recording studio, the one he named after her, burned to the ground in 1981 in a fire-ruled arson, uninsured, while it sat up for sale. By his own estimate, Ike spent $11 million on cocaine. When he died in 2007, he was reported to be worth about $500,000. To understand how small that number is, consider this. In 1993, a group sampled one of his old records for a 90s hit called Shoop, and that single sample reportedly paid Ike a royalty in the same range as the entire fortune he died with. Everything else, the studio, the publishing, the real estate he fought so hard to keep, was gone. The man who took everything of value in the settlement died with almost nothing. The woman who took nothing but a name turned that name into a fortune. And the story did not even end when she died. In 2026, 3 years after she was gone, her name changed hands one more time. A company built by one of the founders of ABBA bought the majority stake in her catalog and the rights to her name and likeness. This is the same company that turned ABBA into a digital concert in London, a show performed entirely by lifelike avatars that has drawn more than 3 million visitors and generated billions. They have done deals like this with only a small handful of names, paying more than $300 million for the rights to Kiss. And then they came for Tina Turner. The terms were never disclosed, and her estate was not even the one selling. The company's chief executive said she believes Tina Turner will one day sit alongside names like Elvis and Marilyn Monroe. The leash she rescued in that divorce is still earning money today, decades after she reached into the wreckage and took it, and years after she died. So when people tell you Tina Turner walked away from that marriage with nothing, understand that they have the story exactly backward. She walked away with the one thing that turned out to matter more than all of it. Everyone else grabbed the assets that were already burning. She took the future. She said it herself, standing there signing away 16 years of work. You take everything we built. I'll take my name. It took her 45 years to prove what that name was worth, and the number kept climbing long after she was gone. If you want the other side of this exact playbook, the artists who signed their names away and got pennies for it, we opened the Toni Braxton contract and read it line by line, and that breakdown is on screen right now.